They say a picture says 1,000 words, but that's not quite the case for these 5 unexplainable photos that'll leave you baffled. They all raise far more questions than they answer, and most are pretty strange to be sure. Whether you believe them to be real or not, we figured we'd present them for you and let you decide for yourself. They are all incredibly strange, and most are just downright creepy in every sense of the word. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. Asylum Girl? It goes without saying that some asylums back in the day didn't care about the well-being of their patients. This photo, assuming it's real, sums that sentiment up perfectly. It shows what seems to be a patient in a mental asylum being treated more like an animal than a human being. It could be that she was in danger of hurting herself and quite possibly others. We would assume, however, that they would have opted to use a simple straitjacket to keep her from lashing out, instead of setting her up in what looks very much like a medieval torture device. We can't tell for sure, but it also seems like that tiny, creepy excuse for a room is open to the elements at the top, as it seems like there's some natural light coming through, and there's evidence that the place sees a lot of rain based on the look of the walls. Whatever the reason was for this girl being kept like this, it probably wasn't good for her well-being, and we know that any doctor today wouldn't dream of keeping their patients in such a horrible state. Doctors back in the day weren't the best of people and were more akin to butchers than healers in many regards. The straps attached to this girl's waist and wrists could be keeping her from causing harm, but we can think of 1,000 better ways to ensure that she wasn't going to be a problem, most of which don't involve forcing her to stand with her arms stretched out while standing still for extended periods of time. We've never seen a room that looks more dirty or dingy than this one, and we're sure that spending even a few minutes in it would expose us to all sorts of nasty diseases that we'd rather not think about. All this is mere conjecture because, like we mentioned earlier, we're not 100% sure exactly what's going on here. But we can guarantee that this girl's no POW or other such troublemaker. She definitely doesn't seem like a danger to society or to herself, but that could be because she's completely unable to move, even to scratch an itch, which we think would be absolute torture. If we were given a choice between being locked up like this for the rest of our lives or a quick death, we'd pick death every single time, even if it wasn't quick or painless, because anything would be better than this. This is honestly just like something out of a horror movie, and we half expect the girl's head to spin around 180 degrees and begin spitting massive amounts of green slime at us like she's possessed by some ancient evil. Without being able to see her face, we can't see what kind of agony she's in, which is a small blessing. If you can help us shed any light on this photo, it'd be appreciated, because we really can't make heads or tails of it at all. And at this point, we'd be much happier just forgetting the entire thing and pretending that this never happened. That being said, it would make us just as bad as the people who put her there, and we're convinced that they were pretty damn evil, whoever they were, Hippocratic Oath or not. Number 4. Storefront Possession. Speaking of demonic possession, this next photo is definitely a sign that something isn't right in the world. While we assume that this was just an optical illusion after a security camera glitched out, we also wouldn't be surprised if this was an actual representation of something that actually happened. It's not too much to think that she could have got her neck back at that angle, as some people really are that flexible. To be honest, if we could pull off a stunt like this, then we'd do it all over the place, hoping to freak people out in the exact same way that this girl's scaring the living daylights out of us now. At the end of the day, it would be a pretty hilarious prank to pull on people, but we can't imagine that it's a healthy thing to do, regardless of whether or not it's possible. It could be that she's just wildly excited about Redbox's newest releases and got a little too over-enthused about it. No movie will ever cause us to do something like this, but that very much looks like the case here. What we really assume happened is that she tilted her head back and shook it to unkink her hair, or something along those lines, with the security camera being at just the right angle to make it look like her angle was far more severe than it actually was. These sorts of illusions happen in photos all the time. Well, not all the time, but we've seen enough freaky stuff that ended up having quite reasonable explanations that we're willing to give this girl a little benefit of the doubt. If this is a sign that supernatural creatures or demons are living among us, then by all means bring out an entire army of priests. We doubt that any amount of Hail Marys could save her everlasting soul after this display, but it's definitely worth a try. If she doesn't need an exorcist, then she probably needs to lay off the coffee, because it's got her acting far too crazy to be out in public. What really makes this photo creepy is the fact that if you look closely, you can only see the whites of her eyes, with her irises and pupils being hidden from view. This combo really brings the whole scene together into a terrifying nightmare of a photo, and we have to say that if we were a security guard watching this, we'd probably end up leaving our post and running as fast as we could in the other direction without so much as a second look over our shoulder. Sorry people, but your safety isn't worth us getting possessed and dragged down to hell for an eternity of suffering and damnation. It's also clear that this girl's way beyond redemption, so there will be no point in even trying to help. Number 3. Creepiest note ever. We don't know where this photo was taken, but the note that it features is more than enough to terrify us. That being said, we think this is absolutely hilarious, assuming it's just a prank and not the real deal, and we can't wait to apply it ourselves. The note, posted to what seems to be a lamppost, explains in creepy kidnapper-style block letters that an unidentified person's busy staring down at the reader from an unnamed window. Busy taking pictures of anyone unlucky enough to have their curiosity piqued. It then explains that the guy will then take that picture and use it to create a miniature model of them. We assume that this guy, assuming there is one, is pretty whacked out, and we wouldn't want anyone like that taking our picture, not to mention creating a tiny likeness of us that he can then do whatever he pleases with. It's fairly non-invasive, but still not worth thinking about, as this kind of thing could get really dark far too quickly, in our opinion. The note goes on and states that he's got an entire army of these kinds of models, seemingly created from other photographs of other interested people, and that he routinely uses them to do strange things, although it gives no indication as to what these things are. The note specifically uses the term weird games, which is terrifying when you really stop to think about it. Then again, it's a good thing he only uses models to act out his twisted fantasies and doesn't go out of his way to actually kidnap people and force them into strange situations. We picture a guy in a jigsaw mask staring down at the street all day every day just waiting for his next victim to stroll by. This note has absolutely no story behind it, and that's what makes it so terribly creepy. While it's probably just some kid's idea of a practical joke, we envision some people really taking it to heart and losing sleep over the thought, which is probably more than whoever was behind the note could have expected. Whoever put this up has a twisted imagination, and we think it's pretty awesome that someone not only came up with the idea but actually put it into practice. This seems like something that a group of friends would laugh about doing but never actually attempt, but we're super glad that some weirdo followed through despite how worrying it would be if it were actually true. Number 2. Visitors in the night. We can safely say that the footprints in this photo are definitely human and not those of an animal. We could potentially be wrong, but the odds of that are fairly slim. Then again, we'd be much less worried for the person who took this photo if the prints did happen to be those of an animal, but much like us, they're convinced that they had a very disturbing visitation one night that could very well have ended up in murder or something just as sinister. The story behind the photo is that they were left home alone when their parents went out of town for a night. Nothing seemed to be amiss during the night, and they walked downstairs after an uneventful sleep, pausing at the sliding glass door when they noticed something out of the ordinary. They said it had been snowing the entire day before and throughout most of the night that followed, meaning that any tracks left in the snow prior to that would have been covered up and hidden from view. What they found was that there were fresh footprints that led from the woods adjacent to the house and right up to the door. It seems like somebody had decided to walk up and peer into their home while they slept in the wee hours of the morning, pausing only briefly before turning around and walking back towards the woods. If we found something like that, we'd immediately shut all the blinds, lock all the doors and windows, and curl up in the fetal position to rock back and forth before finally calling the police in a panic to have them search the place for a murderous prowler. You might think that we're weak-minded, but we're not about to take chances with our lives, especially with such clear evidence that someone had actually walked right up to the back porch and looked directly in through the glass door. Number 1. Wedding Cult. Imagine finishing up your wedding and looking through the photos taken during the ceremony, only to find that your guests were also joined by some very strange, hooded figures. While they're hard to make out right off the bat, it doesn't take much to notice the fact that there are a dozen creepy hooded figures on a balcony located just behind the wedding ceremony. It also seems like they got there using a wooden stepladder placed against the balcony railing, meaning they had to sneak their way up there and probably weren't on the guest list to begin with. We don't know why they're there or what they were hoping to accomplish, but it seems likely that they weren't up to anything good. This could very well be grounds for immediate divorce, as this wedding seems to have been blessed by a very dark and disturbing group of insanely satanic individuals. It could also be that these were friends or acquaintances who just wanted to spice things up and freak out the bride or groom as they looked through their wedding photos after the fact, which, while disturbing, would also be somewhat funny in an odd sort of way. Alright, Top 5ers, we have something very exciting for you to see. Make sure to visit our other channel, The Brilliant. If you like what we have on Top 5's Finest, then we know you will love what we have there too. But be warned, the videos over on The Brilliant are extremely addicting to watch as well. There will be a link in the description to The Brilliant channel, so make sure to visit us now. Or you can go to our latest video popping up on screen right now. Come on, click it. You know you want to. Oh, and while you're here, subscribe also. Heard it gives you superpowers. Anyway, see you soon.